Hey friends, welcome to the Taking Your Next Step podcast from Collegians for Christ. Through each episode, we will journey together focusing on becoming better followers of Jesus. If you're eager, like I am, to follow Jesus Christ, then take your next step now by joining us in today's episode. Before we jump into the episode today, just want to give you a quick reminder about the upcoming Winter College and Career Retreat. January 14th, 15th kicks off 7 o'clock on Friday night. We'll conclude 3 o'clock on Saturday. We'll have a great time of sessions that are relevant, deal with relevant topics, preaching, games, activities, just times to connect together. Of course, delicious food will be intertwined in that. And we'd love to have you participate, whether it's yourself, you want to bring some friends, you want to bring your group. If you are a young adult leader, you can register and get more information at cfcretreats.com. Cost is $25. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'll be glad to answer those questions, but would love to have you join us for this amazing time together in January. So let's dive into our last episode on this study on our identity. We're going to go in a different direction next week as we continue looking at how we can take our next step. And so we'll dive into a different topic that I believe will be a great help to us as we consider how we can continue moving forward and taking our next step in following Jesus Christ. So we talked on Tuesday's episode about the idea of our life is created with tremendous purpose, and us discovering what that purpose is will help us to answer the question of who am I? We understood where this purpose originates. It's not just something you and I think of. God, as He created us with purpose, and He gave us the command to be fruitful and multiply. He gave us the command to have dominion over everything that He created. Think of that. God put you and I here as stewards over all of His creation. And through that, we begin to see our purpose. We begin to see how we can utilize our talents, and we can find why and what we were created for. As we consider more specifically God's will, we understand our purpose originates from our Creator, but we also learn that our purpose is original. We think about God's will. Maybe you've heard that. I want to know God's will for my life. Or people will ask you, what is God's will for your life? We talk about God's will, it's understanding why you exist. I mean, that's discovering God's specific purpose for your life. Colossians chapter number 1, verses 9 and 10 talk about that specifically here. And it says in verse number 9, "For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of His will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God." So here Paul is saying, look, we're praying that you can fulfill God's will in your life. And how he describes that there is amazing, that you might know, once you understand God's will, that you fulfill God's will. Verse number 10 says that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing. So knowing your created purpose and fulfilling that purpose pleases God. Think about that. And so we want to talk about that on today's episode. God's will is His purpose, His desire, or His design for your life. You see, God is your creator. And therefore, He created you for a specific purpose. As He designed you, as He is the great architect behind your life, He created you uniquely, He created you special, and for a specific purpose that only you and I can fulfill. God's will encompasses your career, your relationships. It can encompass where you live, the school you attend, the degree you'll pursue, the church that you'll be a member of, and many other important aspects of life. But the great thing about God's will is knowable. It's not that God is off in the corner trying to whisper His will to us. No, God desires that you and I know His will. He's not trying to hide it from us. He's not trying to just write it on the wall in 5 minutes, and if you don't see it and you can't catch it, then He'll never reveal it to you again. That's not the idea of God nor His will at all. God desires for you to know why you were created, God desires for you to know what your purpose is. And from this will come a pursuit and passion about certain areas of life. You think about people who are passionate about certain topics or certain hobbies or certain activities. Where does that come from? Because many times that is the desire of their heart. That is the talents God has given them. And as they begin to use those for their creative purpose, there's a pursuit and a passion that will come out of that. It will motivate you. Understanding God's will motivate you to do what you were created for. But not only is God's will knowable, God's will is distinct. You see, God has an original and distinct will for your life. God's will for your life is not God's will for my life. God's will for my life is not God's will for the next person. You see, your pathway will be different from every other human on earth. Why? Because you have a master designer that created you special and unique, and He's equipped you to fulfill your purpose. And only you can accomplish this purpose, and this is why God created you. And so with your purpose being original to you, we understand, thirdly here, your purpose is outstanding. So when we talk about God's will for our life, Romans talks about it. It says here, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. In Romans chapter 12, it describes God's will as good, as perfect, and as acceptable. So knowing and doing what you're created for brings a joy, it brings an excitement, and it brings a fulfillment to your life. Your purpose in life, what God created you for, makes us or you really makes up the big part of your identity. You see, it answers some of those vital aspects of the who am I question. We understand where God's will is good, it's perfect, it is acceptable. How can we discover, though, this good, this perfect and acceptable will of God? Well, we can begin by asking God, what was I created for? You can begin by asking yourself some of the following questions. What brings me fulfillment and joy? What gifts and talents do I have, and where could these be used? Sometimes maybe others will point out, hey, you're really gifted in that area. Pay attention when people say stuff like that, because sometimes people will see things in you that you do not see in yourself, and they can see the gifting and talents that God has given you. You can ask yourself, what are my dreams, my desires, and my aspirations? I understand that sometimes what we want is not what God wants, but we also must understand there's certain things that have been put in our heart and our mind from God. The Bible talks about God desires to give us the desires of our heart. And so sometimes the desires we have was planted there by God in the beginning already. And so God desires for us to fulfill that. And so you have gifts and talents. How could those gifts and talents be used, or for what purpose could they be used? Maybe there you begin to find out, this is what I was created for. This is what my heart finds joy in. This is what I really enjoy doing. You can ask yourself also, what unique circumstances have come into my life to direct me towards certain fields, certain places, or certain people? You see, God orchestrates and equips us through various circumstances, through people, through events, through trials, through teachings, through just open doors, closed doors. God uses all of these things to equip us, but also to guide us into understanding what His will is. We've already said God does not desire to hide His will. Your outstanding purpose may be this. It may be a teacher. It may be a business owner, a building contractor, a shift manager, a nurse, a doctor, or a dentist. Your purpose may be something in customer service or elderly care. It may be a calling to be a wife or a husband, or to be a stay-at-home mom. It may be to be a mechanic or electrician. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Whatever you discover your creative purpose to be, do everything in your power to fulfill it. Understand that this is your mission field. We talk about missionaries on the mission field. Understand whatever your calling, whatever your purpose is, regardless if it's vocational, that is your mission field that God has given you to serve and to honor Him. How can you honor God? By fulfilling your purpose, by exercising your talent, to being a good steward of what God has given you and equipped you with. You see, fulfilling your purpose will bring tremendous joy and satisfaction to your life. On the flip side, though, not fulfilling what God created you to do can bring a huge loss of joy, a huge loss of satisfaction in life, and even cause you to begin to question, who am I? Why am I even here? What's my purpose here on earth? And so if you find yourself in that type of situation, maybe we need to begin looking and trying to figure out, okay, maybe I'm not fulfilling my creative purpose. I'm miserable. I'm not happy. I'm not finding joy in this. And, sometimes we have to have jobs and we have to do certain things because we have to. We have to have money. We have to eat. But there come certain times when we could change or make a change or seek out another opportunity. You see, God has put certain talents and desires in your heart for a reason, because you were created with purpose. And that answers the question, who am I? I'm created by God. I'm a child of God. I'm chosen. I'm accepted. I'm adopted. I'm redeemed, forgiven, saved, sealed. All those words in Ephesians chapter 1 and chapter 2. But I'm also created for a reason. I'm created with purpose, and this is what I was created for. There's no greater place to come in your life when you can say, I was created for this, blank, fill it in. This is what my purpose is in life. And we also have to know that sometimes that unfolds, meaning this is what I was created for, and for 10 years I'm fulfilling that, but then I begin to find a loss of joy and satisfaction, and my interest and talents, because of the equipping and time and shaping and all of that, begin to move and adjust and change to over here. So we may need to make an adjustment in our life. And so can you answer the question, I was created for, you fill in the blank? If you can, that's awesome. Give it all you have and enjoy that. I mean, that's the enjoyment that God gives us, and that's part of who you are as a child of God. So honor God in this area of your life. But if you cannot fill in that blank, do not be discouraged. There's many people who cannot, but go on to fill it in. You see, God desires for you to know this about yourself, so seek Him specifically for the answer. Sit down and answer the questions we talked about and allow God to lead you on a path of discovering your created purpose. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If this podcast has been helpful to you, we would love for you to share it with a friend or subscribe so that you can stay up to date on the latest studies. You can connect with Collegians for Christ online for more information and resources at cfccampusministry.com.